Okay, so we've talked about Bowlby's internal working model before, and it's about how the early attachment determines our thought patterns for developing later attachments. So, for example, if we have an internal working model which was established on a secure attachment, we're likely to have positive towards love and feelings of affection, and therefore we'll show that in our later relationships. So, what Bowlby suggests is that we are determined by our childhood. As well as looking at romantic relationships with and friendships with form of attachment, a really interesting thing to look at is who's more likely to turn out a bully. There's been research on that, linking or correlating secure attachments, insecure attachments to whether you're likely to be a bully or be bullied. And what they found were insecure avoidant children were most likely to be victims, and insecure resistant children were most likely to be bullies, and secure children were very unlikely to be involved in bullying at all. Okay, so Hazen in 1987, they were looking at romantic relationships and how they were associated with the early attachments that we made. And they predicted that people who had experienced secure attachment types in childhood would be more secure in romantic relationships as they get older. So they carried out a questionnaire that they call the Love Quiz that went out in American newspapers, and it first of all assessed the attachment type in infancy using a checklist, and then looked at their relationships using a multi-choice questionnaire. So the results of the early attachment, what they found were 56% of the Americans who completed the questionnaire were securely attached, 25% were avoidant, and 19% were ambivalent attachment type. So what does it mean? Those avoidant types, they feared intimacy in romantic relationships, were often jealous, and were more likely to report that they would go along okay by themselves. They didn't need anybody. Secure attachment types reported friendly, happy romantic relationships, more accepting of their romantic partners, and able to excuse their behaviour and still love them. And they had longer relationships on average and were less likely to be divorced. The ambivalent ones were more likely to be obsessive in romantic relationships, so lots of texting, messaging, extreme attraction, but also extreme jealousy, and they had the shortest shortest time in romantic relationships. So they concluded quite clearly that there was an association between the attachment type in infancy and the nature of the romantic relationships in adult life. So their theory is that early relationships with carers, so going back to that working model idea, that template is used in future relationships. Okay, so you've got this working model of attachment and love. So what happens when you become parents yourselves? Well, research shows that you take on the same attachment style, type, development that your parents took with you. So how your mother was with you, whether she developed secure, insecure attachment, is how you will develop your parenting style. So it's that awkward moment when you realise you sound just like your mother.